I paid for the house. I protected the people inside it. And yet, I was the only one who didn't belong. The gates stood before me like iron sentinels, their ornate scrollwork catching the amber glow of string lights that draped across the estate's facade. Music pulsed from somewhere deep within, something jazzy, expensive, the kind of soundtrack that whispered old money even when it was barely 3 years old. Laughter cascaded over the balcony in waves, champagne-fueled and careless. I could see silhouettes moving behind floor-to-ceiling windows, guests in cocktail dresses and tailored suits, holding crystal flutes like props in a play I'd somehow financed but never been cast in. My hand rested on the cold metal of the gate. I hadn't touched this entrance in over 2 years. Hadn't been invited to cross it in longer than that. But the deed, the actual legal document gathering dust in a safety deposit box downtown, that still had my name on it. Elias Rowan. Owner. Protector. Ghost. I pushed the gate open. It didn't make a sound. Of course it didn't. I'd paid for the expensive hinges, the ones that glided like silk. Every detail of this place, from the Italian marble in the foyer to the infinity pool that seemed to pour directly into the Pacific Ocean, I'd chosen with care. For her. For Maribel. My sister. The sister who right now is standing somewhere in that crowd of strangers, laughing at jokes I'd never hear, living a life I'd built the foundation for, but somehow gotten locked out of. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't kick down your door wearing a mask and waving a weapon. It moves in quietly, with a smile, with reasonable explanations, with a kind of slow, patient work that makes you question your own memory. By the time you realize what's happened, you've already lost so much ground that standing up feels like starting a war. And maybe that's exactly what I was doing tonight. Starting a war. I walked up the curved driveway, my shoes crunching on gravel that cost more per ton than most people's monthly rent. The Valley station sat empty. Everyone was already inside. Through the windows, I could see the great room had been transformed. The furniture I'd carefully selected, pieces that spoke of comfort and permanence, of a home that would weather decades, had been pushed to the walls or removed entirely. In their place stood cocktail tables topped with elaborate flower arrangements, ice sculptures that were already beginning to weep in the coastal heat, trays of hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than the monthly mortgage I no longer paid because there was no mortgage. I'd bought this place outright. For Maribel. God, I'd been such a fool. A couple emerged from the front door, stumbling slightly, drunk on expensive wine and their own importance. The woman wore a dress that cost what I used to make in a month when I first started out. They didn't even see me as they passed, too wrapped up in whatever witty observation the man was making about the host's wine selection. The host. Grant Holloway. My sister's fiancé. The man who'd somehow convinced everyone, including Maribel, that I was the problem. I climbed the steps. The front door stood open, welcoming, warm light spilling out onto the stone porch. I remembered choosing this door. Solid mahogany, hand-carved, with a privacy window of textured glass that let light through but kept the world at bay. Protection without isolation. That's what I'd wanted for Maribel. That's what I'd tried to give her. I stepped inside. The wall of sound hit me first, conversations layering over each other, the clink of glasses, someone's affected laugh that went on too long. The smell came next, expensive perfume, catered food, the sharp tang of imported liquor. But under it all, I could still detect the faint scent of the eucalyptus candles Maribel used to love, the ones she'd burn on quiet Sunday mornings when it was just us, before everything changed. Before Grant. I moved through the foyer slowly, taking in the changes. The painting I'd bought her for her 25th birthday, a landscape by a local artist she'd admired, was gone. In its place hung something abstract and aggressive, all sharp lines and confrontational colors. The kind of art that said, "Look at me," instead of "Live with me." Excuse me? I turned. A woman in a black dress with a clipboard stood before me, her expression shifting from polite curiosity to something harder. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for the party," I said. Her eyes traveled down my outfit, dark jeans, a simple button-down leather jacket. Not black tie. Not even business casual. Just me. The same me who'd worked 16-hour days on 3 continents to pay for this house. The same me who'd wired money every month to make sure Maribel never had to worry. The same me who apparently no longer fit the aesthetic. "This is a private event," she said, her tone sharpening. "Invitation only." "I understand," I replied, keeping my voice level. "But I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to. Is there a problem here?" The voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade. I knew it before I turned. I'd heard it on phone calls that grew increasingly terse, in voicemails that explained less and less, in the background of conversations with Maribel that always seemed to end too quickly. Grant Holloway stood 10 feet away, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits who looked like they worked out recreationally and intimidated people professionally. He was exactly as I remembered from the few times we'd met, tall, effortlessly handsome in that catalog model way, with sandy hair styled just messy enough to seem artless, and a smile that probably closed deals and broke hearts in equal measure. That smile wasn't on display now. Now his face wore something between concern and contempt, the expression of a man dealing with an unexpected inconvenience. "Grant," I said. His eyes narrowed slightly, processing, and then recognition flickered across his features. But instead of surprise or even awkwardness, something else emerged. Something that looked almost like satisfaction. "Elias," he said, his voice carrying just enough volume to draw attention from nearby guests. "I didn't realize you were invited." The conversations around us began to quiet, a ripple of awareness spreading through the crowd. People turning, watching, sensing drama. "I wasn't," I said simply. Grant's expression shifted into something that might have been sympathy if you didn't look too closely. "Then I'm afraid you're going to have to leave. This is a private engagement party, and..." Engagement party. I let the words sit there. "Congratulations." "Thank you." He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, something woody and aggressive, the opposite of the subtle cedar soap Maribel's father used to wear. "But as I said, this event is for invited guests only. I'm sure you understand." "Where's Maribel?" I asked. Something flickered in his eyes. "She's entertaining. And I don't think she'd appreciate you showing up uninvited to cause a scene." "I'm not here to cause a scene." "Then what are you here for?" Grant's voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that felt threatening. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks like harassment. Showing up at someone's private residence." "My private residence," I interrupted, and now I let some steal into my voice. "Or, did you forget whose name is on the deed?" The silence that followed was absolute. Every conversation in earshot died. Guests turned fully now, drinks forgotten, appetites replaced by hunger for scandal. Grant's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. "I think we both know the reality of the situation is more complicated than a piece of paper. Maribel has been living here for years, caring for this house, maintaining it, while you..." He paused, letting the silence work for him. "While you've been God knows where, doing God knows what." "Working," I said, "to pay for this house, to make sure Maribel had security." "Security?" Grant laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what you call it? Buying someone a house, and then using it to control them? Holding it over their head? Making them feel obligated?" The words hit like physical blows, not because they were true, but because they were precisely calibrated. I could see it in the faces around us, doubt creeping in, people reevaluating, wondering if maybe I was the villain in the story. "That's not what happened," I said, but even to my own ears it sounded weak. "Isn't it?" Grant crossed his arms. "Because from what Maribel's told me, you've spent years making her feel guilty. Making her feel like she owes you something. Like she can't make her own decisions without your approval." "That's not..." I started, but he rolled right over me. "You know what I think." Grant's voice rose just enough to make sure everyone could hear. "I think you can't stand that she's happy. That she's found someone who actually respects her independence. Who doesn't treat her like a child who needs to be managed. I never. You bought her a house like she was a pet you needed to keep. And now you show up here, uninvited, acting like you own the place. I do own the place. The words came out louder than I intended, frustration finally cracking through my control. Grant's expression shifted to something that looked almost pitying. See, that's exactly the problem. You think ownership means control. You think because you paid for something, you get to dictate how it's used. But Maribel isn't property, Elias. This house isn't leverage. And your name on some legal document doesn't give you the right to disrupt her life. I felt the crowd's energy shifting, turning against me. Grant was good. I'd give him that. He'd taken the truth, that I own the house, and twisted it into something ugly. Made me sound like a manipulator, a controller, someone who couldn't let go. If you're watching this and thinking about how complicated family dynamics can be, how easy it is for good intentions to get twisted into something dark, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Because this story is about to get a lot more complicated. Where is she? I asked again, forcing my voice to stay calm. Let me talk to Maribel. I don't think that's a good idea, Grant said. You're clearly agitated and I'm not leaving until I see my sister. Grant sighed, the long-suffering sound of someone dealing with an unreasonable person. He turned to one of his suit-wearing companions. Can you call security? I think we need to escort Mr. Rowan off the property before this escalates. Touch me and I call the police, I said flatly. This is my house. Legally. Indisputably. And I have every right to be here. For the first time, genuine anger cracked through Grant's polished exterior. You really want to do this? You want to show everyone what you really are? What I really am? I kept my voice level. What am I, Grant? A bitter, controlling man who can't accept that he's not the center of his sister's world anymore. He stepped closer, voice dropping to something that was almost a hiss. You want to know why Maribel doesn't talk to you? Why she avoids your calls? Because you suffocate her. Because every conversation with you is a guilt trip. Because you can't handle the fact that she's moved on. The words landed exactly where he intended. Not because they were true, but because they echoed the fears I'd carried for years. The worry that maybe I had been too protective. That maybe my absences had driven her away. That maybe. That's enough. The voice came from the stairs, soft but clear. The crowd parted and there she was. Maribel. My sister looked older than the last time I'd seen her. Not in years, it had only been 18 months, but in some indefinable way that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with weight. She wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost a fortune, her dark hair styled in complicated waves, makeup applied with professional precision. She looked beautiful and polished and utterly exhausted. Mari, I said, and hated how my voice cracked on her name. She descended the stairs slowly, one hand trailing on the banister. Our mother's banister. I'd salvaged it from the house we grew up in, had it refinished and installed here so Maribel would always have a piece of home. Her fingers touched the wood like she'd forgotten its history. What are you doing here? She asked when she reached the ground floor. How did I answer that? I'm here because I'm worried? I'm here because something feels wrong? I'm here because Lena called me 3 days ago and said you haven't been yourself, that you seem scared, that she thinks you're in trouble? He showed up uninvited. Grant supplied helpfully. I was just about to have him removed. Maribel's eyes flicked to him, then back to me. Something moved across her face. Too quick to read, gone before I could interpret it. It's my house, Mari, I said quietly. You know that. Is it? She asked, and her voice held an edge I never heard before. Because you haven't been here. You signed it over to me, remember? 3 years ago. My stomach dropped. I put it in a trust. For your protection. For my protection. She repeated the words like they tasted bitter. Or for your control? That's not. I stopped, tried again. Mari, I need to talk to you. Alone. I don't think she wants that, Grant said, moving to stand beside her. His hand found the small of her back, possessive, protective. You need to respect her boundaries, Elias. I'm talking to my sister, I said, keeping my eyes on Maribel. Not you. I'm her fiancé, Grant replied. What affects her affects me.
Marie.
I took a step forward. Please. 5 minutes. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something warring behind her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or doubt. Or both. I don't think we have anything to talk about, she said finally. You made your choices, Elias. You were never here when it mattered. And now. She gestured vaguely at the party around us. Now I'm building a life. With people who actually show up. The words hit harder than Grant's accusations because they came from her. From Maribel. My little sister who used to wait by the window when I came home from deployments, who used to call me every Sunday without fail, who used to sign her emails with your favorite only sister like it was our private joke. What did he tell you? I asked quietly. Excuse me? Grant.
What did he tell you about me?
About the house? About the money? Maribel's expression shuddered.
He didn't have to tell me anything.
I figured it out myself. You think I didn't notice how you'd call and ask about the house more than you asked about me? How every conversation somehow turned into a financial audit. I was trying to make sure you were okay. You were trying to maintain control. Her voice rose, raw emotion finally breaking through. You couldn't stand that I didn't need you anymore. That I found someone who treats me like an equal partner instead of a responsibility. That's not fair, I said, and hated how defensive I sounded. Isn't it? Tears glistened in her eyes, but her voice stayed hard. You left, Elias. Over and over, you left. And every time you came back, you acted like I should be grateful. Like I owed you something for all the money you spent, for all the sacrifices you made. She shook her head. I'm done feeling guilty for being happy. Grant's arms slipped around her shoulders. I think you should go, he said to me, and this time there was genuine menace in his voice. Before this gets ugly. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. At the tension in her shoulders. The way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. The slight tremble in her hands that she hid by clasping them together. And I saw what I'd been refusing to see for months. She was terrified. Not of me. Of him. Of this moment. Of what would happen if she said the wrong thing. Okay, I said softly. I'll go. Relief washed over Grant's face. Maribel just looked tired. I turned toward the door, then paused. But Mari, I want you to know something. That trust one set up? The one you think was about control? I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket. I'd been carrying it for 3 days, ever since Lena's call. This is a copy of the full document. Read it. Really read it. Especially Section 7, Clause B. I held it out. Maribel didn't move. What is that? Grant demanded. Legal documents, I replied. Nothing Maribel doesn't have a right to see. I set the envelope on the entry table. Read it when you're ready. Or don't. But it's there if you want the truth. Get out, Grant said. I met his eyes. He was good. I'd give him that. His expression showed only righteous anger, protective fury on behalf of his traumatized fiancé. But I'd spent enough time in rooms with dangerous men to recognize the calculation underneath. He was already planning his next move, already figuring out how to spin this to his advantage. But he didn't know what was coming. Neither did Maribel. Because the truth wasn't in that envelope. That was just the opening move. I walked to the door, feeling dozens of eyes on my back. At the threshold, I turned back one more time. Maribel was staring at the envelope like it might contain a bomb. Grant was whispering something in her ear, his hand tight on her shoulder. I love you, Mari, I said. That's all I ever wanted you to know. Then I walked out into the night, down the steps, across the gravel driveway that cost a fortune. The party sounds faded behind me. By the time I reached the gate, I could barely hear the music anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Naomi Feld, my attorney. How'd it go? I typed back. Phase 1 complete. He took the bait. Her response came immediately. Good. See you tomorrow. We'll end this. I pocketed my phone and looked back at the house one more time. Lights blazed from every window, making it look like a beacon in the darkness. Or maybe a trap. Because that's what it had been, really. Not the house that had always been about love, about taking care of Maribel after our parents died. But what Grant had done with it, the way he'd twisted my absence into abandonment, my protection into control, my love into something ugly and suffocating. The thing about patient predators is that they don't just take. They isolate. They rewrite history. They turn your strengths into weaknesses and your good intentions into weapons they can use against you. But they make mistakes too. And Grant Holloway was about to discover he'd made a critical one. He'd assumed I was the easy target. The absent brother, the guilty party, the man who couldn't let go. He'd built an entire narrative around my supposed controlling nature, my financial manipulation, my inability to accept Maribel's independence. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that I'd been documenting everything for 18 months. Every forged document, every manipulated conversation, every penny that disappeared from Maribel's accounts, every time he isolated her from friends and family. Every legal corner he'd cut trying to transfer ownership of the house. I'd been patient. I'd played the role he'd assigned me. The distant brother, too wrapped up in his own life to notice what was happening. I'd let him think he was winning. But patience wasn't weakness. It was strategy. And tomorrow, when we met with Naomi and the evidence came out, when the truth emerged about the protective clauses I'd built into that trust, when Grant discovered that his engagement party, held at the house without proper authorization, had actually triggered an immediate legal review of all property claims. Tomorrow, he'd learn that some traps take years to set, and that the quietest enemies are often the most dangerous. I walked down the coastal road, the Pacific Ocean stretching black and infinite to my left. Somewhere behind me, the party continued. Grant was probably celebrating, thinking he'd won. Thinking he'd successfully painted me as the villain and himself as the hero. He had no idea that every conversation tonight had been recorded by the security system I'd installed, the one he didn't know about because it was hardwired into the house's original construction. He had no idea that the trust document I'd left contained carefully worded passages that would make any lawyer's eyes widen with understanding. And he definitely had no idea that Lena Ortiz wasn't just Maribel's concerned friend. She was also a forensic accountant who'd been quietly tracking financial irregularities for the past 6 months. Some storms announce themselves with thunder. Others arrive in silence, and you don't realize you're drowning until the water closes over your head. Grant Holloway was about to learn the difference. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 11:30. In 9 hours, Naomi would file the preliminary injunction. In 12, the audit would begin. In 24, Grant's world would start collapsing. And Maribel. God, I hope Maribel would understand. I hoped she'd see that everything I'd done, the trust, the distance, the careful documentation, had been about protecting her. Not controlling her. Not manipulating her. Protecting her from someone who saw her as a means to an end. The ocean waves crashed against the cliffs below, relentless and patient. That's what justice required sometimes. Not lightning strikes, but erosion. Not dramatic confrontations, but careful, methodical work. I'd given Grant exactly what he wanted tonight, a scene, an embarrassment, proof of my supposed instability. And in doing so, I'd secured the last piece of evidence we needed. If you've stuck with this story so far, hit that like button. Because what happens next is going to change everything these characters thought they knew about power, family, and the long game. The night air was cold coming off the ocean, but I barely felt it. I was already thinking ahead, planning the next moves, anticipating Grant's responses. He'd try to spin tomorrow's developments, of course. He'd claim I was harassing them, that I was using my money and lawyers to bully my own sister. But the evidence didn't lie. And I had so much evidence. The walk back to my car took 20 minutes. I'd parked deliberately far away, wanting time to think, to prepare. By the time I reached it, I'd already outlined the next 48 hours in my mind. Tomorrow morning, legal filing. Tomorrow afternoon, preliminary hearing. Tomorrow evening, the truth comes out. And then we'd see if Maribel could forgive me for what I'd had to do. For the deception, for the long game, for letting her think I'd abandoned her when really I'd been building a cage around the man who was trying to trap her. I sat in my car for a long time, engine off, staring at nothing. The adrenaline from the confrontation was fading, leaving behind the exhaustion I'd been carrying for months.
Years, maybe. My phone buzzed again.
This time it was a text from Lena. She opened the envelope. Reading it now. Grant tried to take it away, but she wouldn't let him. I closed my eyes, relief washing through me.
Good.
That was good. The document would tell her enough. Not everything, but enough to plant doubt. Enough to make her start asking questions. Another text. She looks scared, but also angry. At him, I think. Hard to tell. That was the line we'd been walking for months, trying to wake Maribel up without pushing so hard she retreated further into Grant's manipulation. Every move had to be calibrated. Too aggressive, and we'd lose her. Too subtle, and she'd never see the truth. I started the car and pulled out onto the coastal highway. The road stretched empty before me, lit only by my headlights and the occasional street lamp. This late, this far from the city center, it felt like I was driving through a void. Maybe that's what the past 3 years had been. A void where my relationship with my sister used to be. Grant had filled it with poison, drop by carefully measured drop, until nothing healthy could grow there anymore. But tomorrow we'd start the detoxification process. Tomorrow the truth would begin its slow, painful work. I just hoped it wasn't too late. The drive back to my apartment took 40 minutes. I lived simply now, a small place near the harbor, nothing like the estate I'd bought for Maribel. After our parents died, after I made sure she was settled, I'd poured everything into making sure she'd never have to worry. Their life insurance hadn't been much, but combined with my savings and the money from selling their house, it had been enough for a down payment. Then I'd worked my ass off to pay it off completely. 3 years of contract work overseas. 3 years of barely seeing my sister. 3 years of telling myself it was worth it because she'd have security, stability, a foundation to build her life on. And Grant Holloway had slithered in during my absence and convinced her I'd done it all for control. The apartment was dark when I arrived. I didn't bother turning on lights, just dropped my keys on the counter and collapsed onto the couch. Through the window, I could see the harbor, boats rocking gently at their moorings, their masts silhouetted against the night sky. My phone lit up with another message. Naomi this time. Everything's filed. We're set for 9 a.m. Judge Alvarez. She's good, fair, smart, doesn't suffer fools. I typed back. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This could still go sideways. Be prepared for Maribel to be angry. At you, at me, at the whole situation. I know. And Elias? Get some sleep. You'll need to be sharp tomorrow. I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Sleep seemed impossible. My mind kept replaying the confrontation, analyzing every word, every expression. The way Grant had so effortlessly painted me as the villain. The way Maribel had looked at me, like I was a stranger. A threat. How had we gotten here? When had the brother who used to make her laugh become the man she was afraid to be alone with? I knew the answer. I'd watched it happen in slow motion, had documented each step of Grant's isolation campaign. The way he'd schedule things during our planned calls. The way he'd interpret everything I said in the worst possible light. The way he'd slowly, systematically convinced her that my concern was control and my absence was abandonment. Classic manipulation. Textbook stuff if you knew what to look for. I'd known what to look for. I'd seen it before in other contexts, other situations. But knowing and stopping it were two different things. Especially when the victim couldn't see what was happening. Especially when any attempt to intervene just proved the manipulator's narrative. So I'd waited. I'd built my case. I'd gathered evidence. And I trusted that eventually, the truth would be impossible to deny. Tomorrow we'd find out if that trust was justified. I must have dozed off eventually because the next thing I knew, gray dawn light was filtering through the windows and my phone was buzzing with incoming messages. I sat up, disoriented, my neck stiff from sleeping at an awkward angle. The first message was from Naomi. Courthouse. 1 hour. Don't be late. The second was from Lena. She knows. Grant knows she knows. It's getting ugly. Please hurry. My heart rate spiked. I was on my feet before I'd fully processed the message, grabbing my keys, heading for the door. The hearing wasn't for another hour, but if things were escalating at the house.
My phone rang. Naomi.
Slight change of plans, she said without preamble. Grant's lawyers filed an emergency countermotion at 6 a.m. They're claiming you're mentally unstable and requesting a restraining order. Of course they are, I said, already in my car, engine starting. Does the judge know the context? She's reading the full filing now. But Elias, they have declarations. From Maribel. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of declarations? Statements about your behavior. Times you were allegedly controlling or threatening. Financial manipulation. It's all bullshit, but it's notarized bullshit. How many statements?
5.
Dated over the last 6 months. My mind raced. She didn't write those. Can you prove it? Can they prove she did? What's the notary information? Hang on. Papers shuffled. Victor Merritt, seal number. That's Grant's business attorney, I interrupted. The one who's been trying to transfer the house deed. Lena has documentation of their meetings. Send me everything Lena has.
Now.
And get to the courthouse. We've got 30 minutes to turn this around, or the judge is going to issue a temporary restraining order, and you won't be able to go anywhere near that property. I hung up and immediately called Lena. She answered on the first ring. I already sent everything to your lawyer. But Elias, you need to know. Grant's here with 2 men I've never seen before, and Maribel is locked in the bedroom. I heard yelling. Can you get to her? He's standing in front of the door.
Says she's resting. But she's not, Elias.
I can hear her crying. Every instinct screamed at me to turn the car around, to go back to the house, to force that door open and get my sister out. But that's exactly what Grant wanted. That's exactly what would destroy everything we'd built. Lena, can you record this? Video, if possible. Already am. But if he catches me, get out if you feel unsafe. Do not put yourself at risk. What about Maribel? The hearing is in 25 minutes. If everything goes right, police will be there within an hour with an order to enter the premises.
Can you stay that long? A pause.
I'll try. Thank you. I ended the call and focused on driving, pushing the speed limit, running amber lights. 20 minutes to the courthouse. 20 minutes to save everything. The courthouse parking was nearly empty this early. I found Naomi on the steps, briefcase in hand, looking grimmer than I'd ever seen her. Tell me we can win this, I said. We can win this, she replied. But it's going to be close. And Elias? Whatever happens in there, keep your cool. Grant's team is going to paint you as unstable, controlling, possibly dangerous. Every reaction will be scrutinized. I understand. We entered the building, passed through security, climbed stairs to the 3rd floor. The courtroom was small, designed for preliminary hearings and emergency motions. Grant was already there with his legal team, 3 sharp-suited lawyers who probably cost more per hour than I used to make in a week. Maribel wasn't with them. Where's my sister? I demanded. One of Grant's lawyers, a woman with severe features and cold eyes, stepped forward. Ms. Rowan chose not to attend. She found the prospect of seeing her brother too distressing given recent events. Recent events meaning last night when he crashed her engagement party, another lawyer added. My house. My property. I said, but Naomi put a warning hand on my arm. Save it for the judge, she murmured. We took our seats. The bailiff announced Judge Alvarez, and everyone stood as she entered. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 50s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Be seated, she said, settling into her chair and immediately pulling files toward her. I've reviewed the initial filing and the countermotion. This is quite the mess you've brought me this morning. Your Honor, Grant's lead attorney began, but the judge held up a hand. I'll hear from the plaintiff first. Ms. Feld. Naomi stood. Your Honor, my client Elias Rowan established an irrevocable trust 3 years ago for the protection of property he purchased for his sister, Maribel Rowan. That trust contains specific clauses designed to prevent exactly what has happened, an outsider attempting to manipulate access to and control of the property. Your Honor, the opposing counsel interjected, Mr. Holloway is hardly an outsider. He's been in a committed relationship with Ms. Rowan for 2 years, and they're engaged to be married. Which is precisely why the trust was structured as it was, Naomi continued. Mr. Rowan anticipated the possibility of someone using emotional leverage to gain control of a valuable asset. Are you suggesting my client is a fortune hunter? The lawyer's voice dripped with indignation. I'm suggesting the evidence will show a pattern of financial manipulation, emotional isolation, and fraud. The judge's eyebrows rose. Those are serious allegations, Miss Feld. I have documentation to support them. Naomi began pulling folders from her briefcase. Your Honor, opposing counsel stood. We have 5 notarized statements from Ms. Rowan herself detailing years of controlling behavior by her brother. Financial manipulation. Emotional abuse. This trust isn't protection. It's another form of control. My jaw clenched, but I stayed silent. I'd like to see those statements, Judge Alvarez said. Papers were exchanged. The judge read in silence for long minutes. Finally, she looked up. These are serious allegations from both sides. However, I note that Ms. Rowan is not present to testify to the veracity of these statements. I also note that the notary in question has a professional relationship with Mr. Holloway. A fact we disclosed, Your Honor, the lawyer said quickly. Noted. Ms. Feld, you mentioned documentation? Naomi handed over a tablet loaded with files. Financial records showing unauthorized transfers from Ms. Rowan's accounts. Email correspondence demonstrating Mr. Holloway's attempts to transfer property ownership despite trust restrictions. And security footage from last night's party showing. There was no security footage, Grant said suddenly, his composure cracking slightly. I had all those cameras removed. The courtroom went silent. You had security cameras removed from property you don't own? Judge Alvarez asked. Grant's lawyer jumped in. Your Honor, my client was simply trying to give Ms. Rowan privacy in her own home. Her brother's home, according to the deed. The judge corrected. Mr. Rowan, did you authorize removal of security equipment? No, Your Honor. And the cameras that were removed were decoys. The actual security system is hardwired into the structure and can't be accessed without demolishing walls. Grant's face went pale. The judge looked at Naomi. Do you have this footage? Yes, Your Honor. Including clear audio of Mr. Holloway last night making statements he now claims were taken out of context. I'd like to see it. What followed was 40 minutes of video and audio playback. Grant's accusations. His manipulation of the narrative. His attempts to have me removed from my own property. And most damning, footage from earlier in the evening showing him coaching Maribel on what to say, his hand tight on her arm, his voice low and threatening. The judge's expression grew increasingly severe as the presentation continued. Finally, she held up a hand. Enough. I've seen enough. She turned to Grant's legal team. Your client has made several actionable admissions in this footage, including acknowledgement of removing security equipment and making unauthorized alterations to property he doesn't own. Your Honor, we'd like to request a recess to consult with our client. Denied. Judge Alvarez's voice was steel. Here's what's going to happen. I'm issuing an immediate injunction preventing Mr. Holloway from entering the property at Ashfall Ridge. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full forensic audit of all financial transactions involving Ms. Rowan's accounts for the past 2 years. She looked at me. Mr. Rowan, you'll have full access to your property as of this moment. I'm also ordering a welfare check on Ms. Rowan to be conducted by law enforcement within the hour. Your Honor, that's excessive, Grant's lawyer protested. It's necessary. This court has serious concerns about Ms. Rowan's well-being based on the evidence presented. Bailiff, please contact the Sheriff's Department and arrange for officers to conduct that welfare check immediately. Grant was on his feet. This is insane. You can't. Sit down, Mr. Holloway, or I'll hold you in contempt. The judge's voice cracked like a whip. Grant sat. I'm also referring this matter to the district attorney for possible criminal investigation into fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable person. The color had completely drained from Grant's face. This hearing is concluded. Mr. Rowan, I'm granting you immediate access to your property with full law enforcement support if needed. Ms. Feld, Please work with the sheriff's department to facilitate entry. Everyone else, out of my courtroom." We stood as the judge swept out. The moment she was gone, Grant's lawyers surrounded him, voices low and urgent. I caught fragments, damage control and settlement, and we need to move fast. Naomi touched my arm. "Let's go. We need to get to that house before Grant's team figures out a workaround." We hurried out of the courthouse. My phone was buzzing. Lena again. "Elias, he's packing. Throwing things into boxes. And Maribel's still locked in that room. I'm really worried. Police are on their way. Less than 30 minutes. Can you?" The call cut off. "Lena?" I tried calling back. Nothing. Naomi and I ran for my car. The drive back to Ashfall Ridge took 15 minutes that felt like hours. When we pulled up, 2 sheriff's vehicles were already there, lights flashing. An officer stopped us at the gate. "I'm the property owner," I said. "Elias Rowan. Judge Alvarez." "I know who you are, sir. We've been briefed. Your friend Ms. Ortiz let us in before the suspect could deny entry." "Suspect? Mr. Holloway is being detained for questioning. We found evidence of possible assault. Ms. Ortiz has bruising on her arm consistent with being grabbed. And we're currently trying to gain access to the master bedroom where Ms. Rowan has locked herself." My heart stopped. "Is she okay?" "We're not sure, sir. She won't open the door. Won't respond to our voices. We're considering forcing entry, but wanted to wait for family, if possible." I was already moving past the officer, up the driveway, into the house. It looked different in daylight, the aftermath of the party still evident in empty glasses and wilted flower arrangements. Police moved through the space with professional efficiency. Grant stood in the great room, hands cuffed behind his back, his carefully constructed persona completely shattered. When he saw me, something desperate flashed in his eyes. "This is all a misunderstanding," he said. "Elias, if you'd just listen." "Save it," I said, moving past him toward the stairs. "She loves me. She chose me." I didn't respond. Just climbed the stairs, following the sound of voices. 2 officers stood outside the master bedroom door, one talking into the radio clipped to her shoulder. "Mr. Rowan," she said when she saw me. "Can you try talking to her? She might respond to family." I stepped up to the door, put my hand against the wood. The same door I'd chosen 3 years ago. Solid oak. Good luck. Privacy when needed. Now it was a barrier keeping my sister trapped.
"Marie?"
I kept my voice gentle. "It's Elias. The police are here. Grant's being detained. You're safe now. Can you open the door?" Silence. "Mari, I know you're scared. I know everything's overwhelming. But I need you to let me in. Please." More silence. Then, so quietly I almost missed it. "Is he really gone?"
"Yes."
"He can't hurt you anymore. He said you'd do this. That you'd turn everyone against me. That you'd take everything away and leave me with nothing. That's not what's happening. I promise you, that's not what this is." "Then what is it?" Her voice cracked. "What am I supposed to believe? Believe that I love you. That I've always loved you. That everything I did, the house, the trust, the distance, it was all to protect you." "You left me alone," she whispered. "For years, you left me alone." "I know, and I'm sorry. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving. Not until you tell me to. Not until you're safe." A long pause. Then the sound of the lock turning. The door opened slowly. Maribel stood there, still in her cream dress from last night, makeup smeared, eyes red from crying. She looked smaller somehow. Fragile. "I'm so tired," she said. I held out my arms. She hesitated only a second before collapsing into them, and then she was sobbing, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. I held her, one hand on her back, one cradling her head, the way I used to when she was little and had nightmares. "I've got you," I murmured. "You're safe. I've got you." "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'm so sorry. Those things I said, those statements I signed. He said you were trying to control me, that you'd never let me be happy, that the only way to prove I was independent was to."
"Sure."
It's okay. We'll figure it out. He said if I didn't sign them, he'd leave. That he'd tell everyone I was unstable. That no one would believe me. She pulled back, looking up at me with devastated eyes. How did I let this happen? How did I not see? Because he's good at what he does. Because manipulation works by making you doubt yourself. I brushed tears from her cheeks. None of this is your fault. I believed him. I believed everything he said about you. I know. I was so cruel to you last night. Mari, stop. Just stop. We have time to work through all of this. Right now, you need rest.
Food. Safety.
Everything else can wait. The officer approached carefully. Ms. Rowan, we need to ask you some questions about Mr. Holloway's behavior. But we can do it tomorrow if you need time. Maribel nodded, exhausted. Tomorrow. Please. The officer nodded and stepped away. Naomi appeared at the top of the stairs. The district attorney wants statements from both of you. But like the officer said, it can wait. Right now, let's just get everyone settled. She looked at Maribel with unexpected gentleness. You've been through an ordeal. Take time to process. Over the next hour, the house gradually cleared. Graham was taken away in a police car. His lawyers followed in a black sedan. The officers finished their documentation. Lena emerged from where she'd been giving her statement, sporting a bruise on her arm, but otherwise okay. I'm fine, she said before anyone could ask. Grabbed me when I tried to record him. But I got the footage anyway. Maribel hugged her fiercely. Thank you. For everything. For not giving up on me. Never, Lena said. That's what friends do. Eventually, it was just the four of us, me, Maribel, Naomi, and Lena, sitting in the great room surrounded by the debris of last night's party. Someone had turned off the music hours ago, but glasses and plates still littered every surface. The ice sculptures had melted completely, leaving puddles on the expensive rental tables. What a mess, Maribel said softly. We'll clean it up, I replied. All of it. She looked at me. The house, the trust. Can you explain it to me? Really explain it. I want to understand.
So I did.
I told her about the clauses I'd built in. How the trust protected the property from anyone trying to claim it through marriage or partnership. How there were provisions to transfer full ownership to her when certain conditions were met. Conditions designed to ensure she was truly independent and not under anyone's undue influence. I wasn't trying to control you, I said. I was trying to make sure no one else could. There's a difference. Why didn't you just tell me? Because if Grant knew the specifics, he'd have found a way around them. Abusers always do. I had to let him think he was winning while I built the case. I met her eyes. I hated every second of it, Mari. Every phone call that ended badly, every holiday we didn't spend together, every time you looked at me like I was the enemy. But I couldn't risk tipping him off. So you let me hate you. I let you misunderstand me. There's a difference. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, What happens now? Now. I considered. Now you heal. You figure out who you are without someone telling you. You decide what you want your life to look like. And the house is yours. Always was. The trust transfers to your sole control as of today. Grant's actions last night triggered the release clause. It's yours, free and clear. No conditions. No strings. Maribel started crying again, but quieter this time. I don't deserve this. Not after what I said, what I believed. You deserve safety. You deserve truth. You deserve a brother who shows up. I took her hand. And from now on, I will. No more 3-year absences. No more contract work overseas. I'm here. For as long as you want me. Forever, she said immediately. I want you here forever. I pulled her close again, and over her head I caught Naomi's eye. She nodded once, a promise that the legal side would be handled, that Grant would face consequences, that justice would be served. But right now, justice wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the woman in my arms, the sister I'd almost lost, finding her way back from the darkness someone else had pulled her into. I've got you, I whispered again. And I'm not letting go. If you've made it this far in the story, Thank you for sticking with us through this journey. Hit that comment button and let me know what you would have done in Elias's position. Sometimes the hardest part of protecting someone you love is letting them think you failed them. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings, police statements, and therapy sessions. Grant faced charges ranging from fraud to financial exploitation to assault. His lawyers tried to negotiate plea deals, but the district attorney wasn't interested. The evidence was too strong, the pattern too clear. Maribel threw herself into recovery, both emotional and practical. She hired her own attorney to sort through the financial damage Grant had done. She reconnected with friends she'd been isolated from. She started painting again, something she'd given up when Grant said it was a waste of time. The house slowly became hers in a way it never had been before. She redecorated, removing every trace of Grant's influence. The aggressive abstract art came down. The uncomfortable modern furniture went to auction. In their place, she chose pieces that spoke to her. Warm colors, comfortable textures, art that made her smile. I helped when she asked and gave her space when she needed it. It was a delicate balance, relearning how to be in each other's lives after everything that had happened. But we were finding our way. One evening, about 6 weeks after the party, I found her standing on the balcony, overlooking the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Penny for your thoughts?" I asked, joining her. She smiled. "Just thinking about how different things could have been. If Lena hadn't called you. If you hadn't documented everything. If that trust hadn't been structured the way it was." Don't do that to yourself. I'm not. Not really. I'm just grateful. Terrified of how close I came to losing everything, but grateful. She turned to face me. "He had me convinced you were the problem. That your love was toxic. That I needed to cut you out to be happy." Classique isolation technique. I know that now. In therapy, we've been working through all the ways he manipulated me. It's horrifying to see it laid out. All the little moments I missed. All the times I should have questioned, but didn't. You're not responsible for someone else's abuse. I know. But I am responsible for how I treated you. The things I said at that party. She shook her head. I don't know if I can ever fully make that right. You don't have to. We're good, Mari. We're better than good. She leaned against me, and we stood there in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon. This, standing together, no manipulation between us, no lies or half-truths, this was what I'd been fighting for. "What are you going to do now?" she asked eventually. "Now that you're not playing the long game anymore?" I'd been thinking about that. Maybe stick around. There are contract positions locally. Nothing that requires extended time overseas. I've done enough running. I'd like that. She paused. "And Elias?
Thank you. For not giving up on me.
For seeing what I couldn't. For loving me enough to play the villain when you had to. That's what family does," I said simply. A year later, I stood in almost the same spot, watching Maribel host a party at the house. But this time, everything was different. The guests were her friends, real friends, people who knew her and valued her. The atmosphere was warm, genuine, full of actual laughter instead of performative socializing. Lena was there, of course, now Maribel's business partner in a small art gallery they'd opened downtown. Naomi had come too, having become something of a friend through the legal proceedings. Even Judge Alvarez had stopped by briefly, pleased to see how things had turned out. Grant Holloway was serving 18 months in minimum security and faced years of financial restitution. His reputation was destroyed. His career was over. Everything he'd built on lies and manipulation had collapsed. Some people might call it justice. I called it consequences. Maribel caught my eye from across the room and smiled, a real smile, full of light and life and hard-won peace. She was herself again. Maybe a different version than before, shaped by what she'd endured, but stronger for it. "You did good," Naomi said, appearing beside me with a glass of wine. "We all did."
"True. But you started it."
"You saw the danger and took action, even when it cost you." "What else could I do? She's my sister." Naomi nodded thoughtfully. "Most people wouldn't have been that patient. That strategic. They'd have confronted Grant directly, tried to force Maribel to see the truth. And they'd have lost her. The truth has its own timeline, I said. You can't force someone to see it before they're ready. You can only make sure they're safe enough to survive until they do. As the party continued around us, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of resolution. The knowledge that the right thing had been done, even though it had been hard, even though it had cost. Maribel approached, linking her arm through mine. Walk with me? We slipped out onto the grounds, following the path that wound through the garden to the cliff edge. The ocean stretched before us, eternal and unchanging. I've been thinking about something, she said. That trust you set up. The way you structured it to protect me without controlling me. That took a special kind of love. The kind that thinks ahead. That accepts sacrifice. I just wanted you safe. I know. And I am. Because of you. She squeezed my arm. I want you to know, I understand now. Why you did things the way you did. Why you stayed away. Why you let me think the worst. It must have been agony. It was, I admitted. But it was worth it. You're here. You're free. That's all I ever wanted. I'm planning to update my will, she said suddenly. And I want you to know, if anything ever happens to me, this house goes to you. Not because I owe you, but because you're the only person I trust to do the right thing with it. To see it for what it is, a home, not an asset. A place to build a life, not a thing to be exploited.
Marie.
Let me finish. She stopped walking, turned to face me. You gave me this house out of love. You protected it out of love. You almost lost me out of love. And I want to make sure that if I'm not here, it goes back to the person who understood its true value from the beginning. I didn't know what to say. After everything, the betrayal, the manipulation, the slow, terrible work of saving her, this felt like absolution I didn't know I needed. Thank you. I managed finally.
No.
She smiled. Thank you. For everything. For being the kind of brother who shows up even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. We walked back to the party together, the sound of music and laughter growing louder as we approached. The house stood before us, lights blazing from every window, welcoming and warm. Not a trap anymore. Not a weapon. Just a home. Just what it was always meant to be. Some betrayals take everything from you. Others teach you exactly what you're worth. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they teach you that the people you love are worth fighting for, even when the fight is slow and quiet and no one knows you're waging it. Even when it means becoming the villain in their story until the truth can finally emerge. Because that's what love does. It protects. It endures. It waits. And when the moment comes, when the trap springs and justice finally arrives, it's there to catch you as you fall. That's what family means. And now we both knew it.